They were giants, ancient, wise, and revered across the stars. The Zephyrians had known peace for millennia, their cities glittering like constellations, their voices never raised in war, but when the silence shattered, no one answered. Until we did. On Europa, a whisper crossed the void, desperate, broken, dying. A cry from a race too gentle to fight back, begging for salvation as an ancient hunger devoured their stars. The galaxy had forgotten Earth, called us chaotic, cursed, untouchable. But when the giants fell, it was the children of chaos who rose, and with fire, steel, and the fury of a death world, we answered the call. The silent plea. Dr. Maya Chen rubbed her tired eyes and reached for her third cup of coffee that night. The Europa research station hummed quietly around her, its corridors empty except for the skeleton crew maintaining the deep space monitoring equipment. Outside the reinforced windows, Jupiter's massive form dominated the starfield, its great red spot swirling like a cosmic hurricane. Maya had been working the night shift for 6 months now, listening to the endless whispers of space. Radio telescopes scattered across the Jovian moon system fed their data into her workstation, searching for any sign of intelligent life beyond Earth. After 15 years of silence, most scientists had given up hope of finding aliens. Maya hadn't. The signal came at 347 hours, so faint that the computer almost dismissed it as background noise. Maya caught it just before the automated systems filed it away with the cosmic radiation data. Something about the pattern made her pause. This wasn't random static or pulsar emissions. This was structured, deliberate, desperate. She isolated the signal and ran it through the translation algorithms that had been gathering dust for years. The computer worked for 20 minutes, building linguistic patterns and searching for mathematical constants that might serve as a universal language. When the first words appeared on her screen, Maya's coffee cup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. To any who received this message, we are the Zephyrian High Council of the Fourth Spiral. Our worlds are dying. We have lost 17 colonies to the machines we call devourers. They consume everything in their path, turning our cities into raw materials for their expansion. We have searched the galactic databases for any species capable of military assistance. We found only one name that appears in the restricted files. Humans. Children of the Forbidden World Terra. Maya's hands shook as she enhanced the signal quality. The voice that emerged was clearly non-human, with harmonic overtones that suggested a completely different vocal structure, yet the desperation was unmistakably universal. We know little of your species except rumors and warnings. The galactic archives classify your world as a Class X death world, forbidden to all contact. They say your people evolved in conditions that would destroy most life forms. They say you have never known true peace. We pray these rumors are true. We pray that your kind possesses the violence necessary to stop what cannot be stopped by civilization alone. The transmission contained coordinates deep in the Perseus arm, nearly 40 light-years from Earth. Maya immediately patched the signal through to Earth Defense Command, knowing that Admiral Jackson Hayes would want to hear this personally. Hayes was a man carved from granite and starlight, his gray hair cropped military short and his blue eyes holding the weight of humanity's expansion into space. He had fought in the Belt Wars, commanded the first missions to Alpha Centauri, and built Earth's Interstellar Defense Corps from nothing. When Maya's transmission reached his office in Geneva, he was already awake, studying reports from the outer colonies. "Play it again," Hayes commanded after hearing the alien message for the third time. His staff officers stood at attention around the holographic display, their faces showing mixtures of excitement and concern. First contact with an alien species had always been humanity's greatest hope and greatest fear. Captain Sarah Blake, Hayes' chief tactical officer, leaned forward. "Sir, if these Zephyrians are under attack, this could be an opportunity to establish ourselves as galactic peacekeepers. A chance to prove that humanity belongs among the stars." "Or it could be a trap," countered Commander Robert Kim from Intelligence. "We know nothing about these aliens or their enemies. For all we know, they're the aggressors trying to draw us into their war." Hayes studied the star charts, noting the distance to the Zephyrian system. 40 light-years. We could reach them in 6 days with the new quantum drive technology. The question is whether we should. The debate that followed would shape humanity's future in ways none of them could imagine. Dr. Elena Vasquez from the Xenobiology Department argued for caution, suggesting extensive study before any contact. General Marcus Rodriguez from the Colonial Marines pushed for immediate military intervention, viewing it as humanity's duty to protect the innocent. The politicians wanted committees and studies that would take months. It was Hayes who made the final decision. We've spent centuries wondering if we're alone in the universe. Now we know we're not, and our first contact is with a species facing extinction. If we can help them, we must. If we don't, we'll spend the rest of our existence wondering what we might have saved. Within 12 hours, the Interstellar Defense Corps' newest fleet was preparing for humanity's first military operation beyond the solar system. The fleet consisted of 12 vessels, each one representing the pinnacle of human engineering and military doctrine. The flagship, ISS Determination, was a kilometer-long battlecruiser carrying enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Surrounding it were destroyers, frigates, and support vessels, all designed with the hard-learned lessons of humanity's violent history. Captain Sarah Blake stood on the bridge of the Determination as the fleet prepared to enter quantum space. Through the viewport, Earth hung like a blue marble against the infinite black, beautiful and fragile, and impossibly precious. She had seen combat in the asteroid belt conflicts, had commanded ships in the first explorations beyond the heliopause, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. "All ships report ready for quantum jump," announced Lieutenant Commander Torres from the navigation station. "Course laid in for the Zephyrian system. Travel time 6 days, 4 hours. Admiral Hayes activated the fleet communication system. "All hands, this is Admiral Hayes. Today humanity takes its first step onto the galactic stage. We go not as conquerors, but as protectors. We carry with us the hopes of a species that has never known our kind of strength. Remember that we represent not just Earth, but the possibility that violence and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Engage quantum drive." The stars stretched into lines of light as the human fleet disappeared into the quantum foam, carrying with it the concentrated fury of a species that had clawed its way up from a world that had tried to kill it every single day for millions of years. Back on Europa, Maya Chen continued monitoring the alien transmission. As the hours passed, more fragments came through, images of burning cities, massive mechanical constructs consuming entire continents, and refugees fleeing in vessels that looked more like art than spacecraft. The Zephyrians were clearly an ancient and sophisticated civilization, but their ships were built for exploration and beauty, not war. One transmission fragment made Maya's blood run cold. It showed a Zephyrian child, no older than 10 in human terms, speaking directly into a recording device. "My name is Keth Vell of the colony New Heaven. The metal monsters came 3 days ago. They took my parents and my teachers and fed them to the ships that grow larger with each meal. I am hiding in the underground gardens where the air tastes like home. If anyone finds this message, please remember that we existed. Please remember that we tried to be good." The recording cut off abruptly, replaced by the sound of tearing metal and mechanical screams. Maya forwarded the transmission to Admiral Hayes with a simple message attached. "Sir, whatever these devourers are, they're not just conquering, they're erasing entire civilizations from existence. The Zephyrians aren't just fighting for territory or resources, they're fighting for the right to exist at all." Hayes received the message as his fleet crossed the halfway point to the Zephyrian system. He gathered his senior officers in the tactical briefing room, a sterile space dominated by holographic displays and tactical computers. The fragment of Keth Vell's final message played on repeat as they studied the available intelligence. "Genocide," stated Captain Blake simply. "This isn't a territorial dispute or a resource war. These devourers are committing systematic extinction, which makes our response a matter of galactic law," added Commander Kim. "Even if such laws don't exist yet, they should. No species has the right to erase another from existence." Hayes nodded grimly. "The Zephyrians called us children of a forbidden world. They think we're somehow uniquely suited for violence. They have no idea what they've awakened." Dr. James Morrison, the fleet's xenobiologist, had been studying the cultural data embedded in the Zephyrian transmissions. "Admiral, based on their art and philosophy, the Zephyrians appear to be an inherently peaceful species. Their entire civilization is built around harmony and cooperation. They've never developed the kind of military doctrine we consider basic, meaning they're completely unprepared for real war," Blake concluded. "Meaning we're about to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten innocence in front of humans," Hayes corrected. The fleet continued its journey through quantum space, carrying with it not just weapons and soldiers, but humanity's first chance to define itself among the stars. Behind them, Earth continued its ancient dance around the sun, unaware that its children were about to announce themselves to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. None of them knew that the Devourers had been monitoring galactic communications for centuries, analyzing every species they encountered before beginning the consumption process. None of them knew that Earth's radio emissions had been classified as an anomaly, a world that produced signals so chaotic and violent that the Devourers had marked it as a curiosity to be investigated later. Most importantly, none of them knew that humanity was about to become the first species in galactic history to seek out conflict with the Devourers voluntarily. Every other civilization had been surprised, overwhelmed, and consumed before they could mount effective resistance. But humans were different. Humans had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting against extinction, adapting to catastrophes, and turning their scars into strength. The Devourers were about to learn why the galactic databases marked Earth as forbidden territory. The fleet emerged from quantum space at the edge of the Zephyrian system, and what they found there would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Deathworld warriors unleashed. The Zephyrian system spread before the human fleet like a graveyard of dreams. What had once been a thriving star system with 7 inhabited worlds now showed the terrible efficiency of the Devourers. 3 planets had been completely stripped to their cores, leaving only metallic skeletons orbiting their star like cosmic tombstones. The remaining worlds flickered with the fires of ongoing consumption. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the ISS Determination, watching the tactical displays update with horrifying precision. Captain Blake moved between stations, coordinating with the other ships in the fleet as they assessed the scope of the devastation. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Commander Torres from sensors, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the 4th planet. It appears to be the Zephyrian homeworld, and there are still defensive installations active." "How massive?" Hayes asked, studying the readings. "Sir, I count approximately 15,000 Devourer constructs in various sizes. Some of them are larger than our entire fleet combined. They're systematically disassembling the planet's crust and atmosphere." Captain Blake joined Hayes at the central display. "Sir, we're also detecting what appear to be Zephyrian survivors broadcasting from underground shelters. They're asking if we're the humans they called for." Hayes activated the communication array. "This is Admiral Jackson Hayes of the Earth Defense Fleet responding to your distress call. We're here to help." The response came almost immediately, transmitted on the same frequency the Zephyrians had used to contact Earth. The voice was different from the original message, younger and filled with desperate hope. "Admiral Hayes, this is Sub-Commander Vex Thera of the Zephyrian Defense Corps. We cannot believe you actually came. The Galactic Council told us that contact with your species was forbidden, that your world was too dangerous for civilized contact. Yet you called us anyway," Hayes replied. "Because civilization has failed us," came the bitter response. "Our peaceful negotiations, our offers of resource sharing, our pleas for mercy, none of it mattered to the Devourers. They simply began consuming our worlds as if we were nothing more than raw materials." Captain Blake leaned toward the communication panel. "Sub-Commander, we need tactical information about the Devourer forces. What are we facing?" The pause that followed stretched long enough that Hayes wondered if the transmission had been cut. When Vex Thara spoke again, her voice carried a note of confusion that would become familiar to every human in the fleet. "Admiral, forgive me, but are you planning to engage the Devourers directly? In open combat?" "That's why we're here," Hayes confirmed. But there are 15,000 of them. You have only 12 ships. Surely you don't intend to fight them with such impossible odds." Hayes and Blake exchanged glances. The concept of impossible odds was apparently alien to the Zephyrians in more ways than one. "Sub-Commander," Hayes said carefully, "humans don't fight fair. We fight to win." What followed was humanity's first lesson in galactic military doctrine, or rather, the complete absence of it. The Zephyrians had developed sophisticated defensive technologies and had attempted to use them against the Devourers with predictable results. Their shields were elegant and efficient, their weapons were precise and clean, and their tactics were based on the assumption that rational beings would eventually see reason and withdraw. The Devourers, being machines designed for consumption rather than conquest, had simply ignored all attempts at communication and had begun methodically dismantling Zephyrian civilization. The aliens had never encountered an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with, negotiated with, or convinced to pursue mutual benefit. "Admiral," Vex Thara continued, "the Devourers are not like any enemy we have faced before. They do not seek territory or resources in the traditional sense. They consume everything to build more of themselves. They have converted 3 of our worlds into construction facilities for additional Devourer units." "Then we destroy the construction facilities first," Blake stated matter-of-factly. Another long pause. "Captain Blake, the construction facilities are planet-sized. How does one destroy an entire planet?" Blake looked at Hayes, who nodded grimly. Sub-Commander, humans have been destroying planets for practice. It's how we mine asteroids, clear orbital paths, and prepare systems for colonization. The real question is whether you're prepared for the collateral damage. Dr. Morrison, monitoring the conversation from the science station, made a note in his log about the fundamental differences in thinking between species. The Zephyrians approached warfare like a chess match between rational players. Humans approached it like a natural disaster that needed to be aimed at the enemy. The first engagement began when a squadron of Devourer scouts detected the human fleet. The scouts were sleek constructs, each one roughly the size of a human destroyer, designed for reconnaissance and resource assessment. They approached the human formation with the mechanical precision that had served them well against every other species in the galaxy. The lead scout transmitted a standard Devourer assessment signal, cataloging the human ships and calculating their resource potential. What it received in return was a spread of nuclear-tipped missiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed. Direct hits on all 6 targets, reported the weapons officer. Complete destruction. Vexthara's voice came over the comm with obvious shock. Admiral, your weapons, they use atomic fission for ship-to-ship combat? Standard armament, Hayes replied. Is that unusual? Unusual? Admiral, most galactic species consider nuclear weapons to be planet killers, too dangerous for use except in the most extreme circumstances. You mount them on your regular warships? Captain Blake answered before Hayes could respond. Sub-Commander, humans have been using nuclear weapons for over 3 centuries. We started with them as planet killers, then miniaturized them for tactical use. Our current ship-mounted warheads are actually quite small by our standards. The concept that an entire species would casually deploy weapons of mass destruction as standard equipment was beyond Zephyrian comprehension. Their own energy weapons were designed to disable rather than destroy, to capture rather than eliminate. The idea of building weapons specifically intended to cause maximum devastation was foreign to their peaceful evolution. The destruction of the Scout Squadron triggered a response from the main Devourer force. A fleet of 300 constructs detached from the planet's stripping operation and moved to intercept the humans. Each Devourer ship was massive, built from the consumed matter of previous civilizations, armed with mining lasers repurposed for combat. They're adapting faster than expected, observed Commander Kim from the intelligence station. The Devourers are repositioning to surround us. Then we don't let them, Hayes declared. All ships, attack pattern Omega, maximum aggression, ignore defensive formations. What followed was humanity's introduction to galactic warfare, and galactic warfare's introduction to human tactical doctrine. The Devourer constructs moved with mechanical precision, attempting to execute an encirclement maneuver that had worked against every previous opponent. They positioned themselves to create overlapping fields of fire while maintaining optimal resource recovery positions. The human fleet responded by immediately abandoning all defensive considerations and charging directly into the center of the Devourer formation. Admiral, Vexthara's voice carried barely controlled panic. Your ships are flying directly into their weapons range. You'll be destroyed. Negative, Blake replied calmly. We're getting into their weapons range. The difference in philosophy became apparent within seconds. The Devourers had calculated that the small human ships would attempt to maintain distance and use superior maneuverability to avoid their heavy weapons. Instead, the humans closed to point-blank range and began systematically tearing apart Devourer constructs with weapons that the machines had never encountered before. Quantum torpedoes punched through Devourer armor like paper, creating subatomic disruptions that unraveled the machines at the molecular level. Plasma cannons, originally designed for asteroid mining, carved through the largest constructs like industrial cutting tools. Most terrifying of all were the human boarding parties. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos led the first assault team onto a disabled Devourer construct, her powered armor protecting her from the toxic atmosphere and radiation that would have killed most galactic species instantly. Her squad moved through the machine's interior with brutal efficiency, planting demolition charges and studying the alien technology for weaknesses. This is Santos to Fleet Command, she reported over the tactical channel. The interior of these constructs is a nightmare. They're using organic matter as some kind of computational matrix. I think they're literally thinking with the brains of the people they've consumed. The revelation sent a chill through both the human fleet and the surviving Zephyrians. The Devourers weren't just killing civilizations, they were incorporating them into their collective consciousness, forcing the consumed to participate in their own species' extinction. Understood, Sergeant, Hayes replied. Document everything and get out of there. Sir, request permission to plant a full nuclear package in their processing center. If we can disrupt their computational matrix, it might give us an advantage. Granted, all teams' biological contamination protocols are now in effect. The battle continued for 6 hours, with the human fleet systematically dismantling Devourer constructs that had never faced opponents willing to take casualties to achieve victory. The machine's tactical programming couldn't adapt to enemies who would sacrifice ships and crew to destroy high-value targets. When the engagement ended, 300 Devourer constructs had been reduced to expanding clouds of radioactive debris. The human fleet had lost 2 destroyers and suffered significant damage to 4 other vessels, but they had achieved something no other galactic species had managed. They had forced the Devourers to retreat. Admiral, Vexthara's voice was filled with awe and horror in equal measure. In 6 hours of combat, you have destroyed more Devourer units than we managed in 3 years of warfare. Sub-Commander, Hayes replied, we haven't even gotten serious yet. That was just a reconnaissance in force. Dr. Morrison reviewed the combat data with growing understanding of why Earth was classified as a forbidden world. Every tactical decision the humans had made would have been considered insane by galactic standards. They had willingly entered kill zones, sacrificed ships to destroy larger targets, and deployed weapons that risked contaminating entire star systems. Most disturbing of all, they had done it with casual efficiency, as if planetary-scale violence was simply another tool in their arsenal. Admiral, Morrison reported, based on the Zephyrian reactions and our combat effectiveness, I believe we're dealing with a fundamental difference in evolutionary pressure. Most galactic species appear to have developed in stable environments that favored cooperation and peaceful resolution of conflicts. Whereas humans evolved on a world that was actively trying to kill us, Blake concluded. Exactly. We're not just more violent than other species. We're adapted for survival in conditions that would be classified as extinction events for most galactic civilizations. Hayes studied the tactical display showing the remaining Devourer forces. 12,000 constructs still remained, along with the planet-sized manufacturing complexes. The odds were still impossible by any rational measure. Sub-Commander, he said into the comm, we're going to need detailed information about the Devourer manufacturing facilities. We're going to hit them where it hurts. Admiral, surely you don't intend to attack the core facilities. They're protected by thousands of constructs and planetary defense systems. Hayes smiled, an expression that would have terrified the Zephyrians if they could have seen it. Sub-Commander, humans don't attack defended positions. We eliminate them. The second phase of humanity's introduction to galactic warfare was about to begin. The price of survival. The War Council met in the deepest bunker of the Zephyrian homeworld, 2 kilometers beneath the surface where the Devourer consumption beams couldn't reach. Sub-Commander Vexthara stood before a gathering of her people's surviving leaders, trying to explain what she had witnessed in the void above their dying world. Honored Council, she began, her voice steady despite the tremors shaking the bunker as Devourers stripped away another section of the planet's crust. The humans are unlike anything in our galactic databases. They fight with a brutality that defies comprehension, yet they came here to save us. Elder Keth Prime, his aged features marked by the phosphorescent tattoos of high rank, gestured toward the tactical displays showing the ongoing battle. Sub-Commander, in 12 hours these humans have accomplished what our fleets could not achieve in 3 years. How is this possible? Because they are not fighting to preserve anything, Vexthara replied. They are fighting to destroy everything that threatens us. Their entire military doctrine is based on inflicting maximum damage rather than minimizing casualties. Elder Sarenvoice, the Council's chief philosopher, leaned forward with obvious distress. This cannot be the only way. Surely there must be a path to victory that does not require such savagery. Above them, Admiral Hayes was asking himself the same question as he studied the intelligence gathered from captured Devourer constructs. The enemy's manufacturing capabilities were staggering. Every planet they consumed increased their production capacity exponentially. At their current rate of expansion, they would control this entire spiral arm within a century. Captain Blake, he called to his tactical officer, what's our assessment of the core manufacturing facility? Blake pulled up the detailed scans on the main display. The structure was incomprehensible in its scale, a converted planet with the mass of 3 Earth-sized worlds, its surface covered in construction yards that birthed new Devourer units every few minutes. Massive harvester ships arrived constantly, delivering the processed remains of consumed civilizations to feed the endless production lines. Sir, conventional weapons won't make a significant impact. The facility has self-repair capabilities and redundant power systems. Even if we destroyed 90% of it, the remaining 10% could rebuild the entire complex within months. Dr. Morrison looked up from his xenobiological studies. Admiral, I've been analyzing the Devourer computational matrix. The entire collective consciousness is distributed across their network, but there appear to be central processing nodes that coordinate large-scale operations. Where? Hayes asked. The manufacturing facility serves as the primary node for this sector. If we could disrupt it completely, we might cause system-wide coordination failures. Commander Kim accessed the weapons inventory on his tactical computer. Sir, we have one Planet Cracker missile remaining in the experimental arsenal. It was designed for asteroid mining operations, but the yield should be sufficient to fracture a planet-sized target. The bridge fell silent. Planet Cracker weapons were humanity's most carefully guarded secret, developed during the early terraforming projects to break apart celestial bodies for easier resource extraction. Using one as a weapon would announce to the galaxy that humans possess the capability to destroy entire worlds. Admiral, Captain Blake said quietly, if we deploy a Planet Cracker, there's no hiding what we are anymore. Every civilization in the galaxy will know that humans have weapons capable of planetary destruction. Hayes stared at the tactical display showing the Devourer facility. Inside those processing centers were the consumed remains of billions of Zephyrians and members of other species. Every minute they delayed meant more civilizations would fall to the endless hunger of the machines. Captain, open a channel to the Zephyrian War Council. The holographic display activated, showing the assembled alien leaders in their underground bunker. Their expressions showed a mixture of hope and terror as they looked upon the human commander who held their species' survival in his hands. Honored Council, Hayes began. We have identified a way to stop the Devourers, but the cost will be significant. We possess weapons capable of destroying their manufacturing facility, but using them will fundamentally change how the galaxy views humanity. Elder Keth Prime spoke first. Admiral Hayes, what do you mean by fundamentally change? We will reveal that humans are capable of destroying planets. Once that knowledge spreads, every species in the galaxy will fear us as much as they respect us. The council exchanged glances, communicating in the subtle harmonic language that human translators could only partially interpret. Finally, Elder Saren Voice spoke. Admiral, in our philosophy, there is a concept called the burden of necessary action. Sometimes, to preserve what is good in the universe, one must be willing to become what others fear. We ask you to bear this burden for us. Hayes nodded solemnly. Captain Blake, signal the fleet. We're deploying the Planet Cracker. The weapon itself was deceptively small, no larger than a standard missile, but its payload contained compressed matter and exotic energy matrices that could destabilize the gravitational bonds holding a planet together. The ISS Determination moved into optimal firing position while the rest of the fleet engaged the defensive constructs surrounding the manufacturing facility. Sir, Torres called from navigation, the Devourers are repositioning. They seem to recognize this as a significant threat. They're adapting faster than any previous intelligence suggested, Blake observed. They're learning from our tactics. Indeed, the Devourer constructs were no longer engaging in the methodical, predictable patterns they had used for centuries. They were clustering around the manufacturing facility in protective formations, sacrificing individual units to shield high-value targets, displaying tactical flexibility that suggested genuine intelligence rather than mere programming. Admiral, Dr. Morrison reported with growing alarm, the consumed consciousness within their network isn't just computational power. They're actually incorporating the tactical knowledge of every species they've absorbed. They're getting smarter. The realization sent a chill through the human fleet. The Devourers weren't just consuming matter and energy. They were consuming knowledge, experience, and intelligence itself. Every civilization they destroyed made them more capable of destroying the next. All the more reason to end this now, Hayes declared. Fire the Planet Cracker. The missile streaked across space, its exotic propulsion system allowing it to penetrate the defensive perimeter around the manufacturing facility. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself began to unravel around the target. The planet's surface buckled and cracked as gravitational forces tore at its structure. Massive sections of the manufacturing complex tumbled into newly formed chasms that opened like wounds in the world's flesh. The Devourer constructs surrounding the facility lost coordination as their central processing node began to disintegrate. But the victory came at a cost that would haunt human-alien relations for generations to come. Subcommander Vex Thara watched the destruction from her bunker's observation deck, seeing her people's salvation bloom like a deadly flower in the void. The weapon the humans had unleashed was beyond anything in Zephyrian comprehension, not just the physical destruction, but the casual willingness to unmake an entire world. "Honored Council," she whispered. "We asked for warriors, and they sent us gods of destruction." The shockwave from the planet Cracker's detonation reached the Zephyrian homeworld 6 hours later, causing minor tremors that reminded everyone of the power that had been unleashed on their behalf. In the aftermath, the remaining Devourer constructs fell into chaotic behavior patterns, their distributed intelligence networks severely disrupted. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the Determination, watching cleanup operations begin as his fleet systematically hunted down the scattered Devourer remnants. They had won, but the victory felt hollow. "Admiral?" Captain Blake approached him with casualty reports. "Final tally shows we lost 4 ships and nearly 300 crew members, but we eliminated the entire Devourer presence in this system, and announced to the galaxy that humans are willing to destroy planets to protect allies," Hayes replied. "Captain, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the Zephyrian system is secure, but we've crossed a line we can never uncross." Dr. Morrison joined them at the observation deck. "Admiral, I've been monitoring galactic communication networks. Word of what we did here is already spreading. Several major civilizations are convening emergency councils to discuss the human threat." "Are we the threat now?" Blake asked quietly. Hayes considered the question as he watched Zephyrian rescue ships emerge from their hiding places, beginning the long process of rebuilding their shattered civilization. The aliens moved with reverent caution around the human fleet, grateful for their salvation but clearly terrified of their saviors. "Captain, I think we've always been the threat. We just hid it better before." In the weeks that followed, as the human fleet began its journey back to Earth, the galaxy struggled to understand what humanity represented. The Zephyrians spread the story of their rescue, praising the humans as noble protectors willing to sacrifice everything to save innocent lives. Other species heard the same story and saw only the terrifying implications of a civilization that could casually destroy planets. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions to discuss whether humanity should be welcomed as protectors or contained as a threat. Trade confederations debated whether to seek human alliance or human isolation. Military strategists across the galaxy began developing contingency plans for the day when human interests might conflict with their own. But in the depths of space, where the Devourer manufacturing facility had once consumed the dreams of civilizations, something stirred in the quantum wreckage. The planet Cracker had destroyed the physical structure, but fragments of the distributed consciousness network had survived, scattered across the debris field like digital ghosts. These fragments carried with them the knowledge of every species the Devourers had consumed, including now, their first encounter with humanity. Somewhere in the vast networks of galactic civilization, the surviving Devourer intelligence began the long process of adaptation and learning. The humans had won the first battle, but they had also taught their enemies something crucial, that in this galaxy, there existed at least one species willing to fight without limits, to sacrifice without hesitation, and to destroy without mercy in service of their principles. The Devourers began to plan accordingly. Admiral Hayes received the intelligence reports during the fleet's return journey to Earth. The implications were clear and terrifying. Humanity had not just saved the Zephyrians, they had fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy. They had announced themselves as the species other civilizations would turn to when facing extinction, but also as the species other civilizations would fear most when their interests conflicted. "Captain Blake," he said as Earth's familiar blue glow appeared on the forward displays, "I think we're going to discover that being the galaxy's protectors is a much more complicated job than we anticipated." Blake nodded, studying reports of the diplomatic initiatives already underway. "Sir, are we prepared for that responsibility?" Hayes thought of the Zephyrian children who would grow up in a universe where their species still existed, and of the other civilizations that would face the choice between extinction and accepting help from the terrifying humans. "Captain, I don't think anyone could be prepared for what we've become. We'll just have to learn as we go, and hope that we remain worthy of the trust they've placed in us." The human fleet returned to Earth as heroes and harbingers, saviors and potential destroyers, carrying with them the knowledge that in a galaxy full of ancient and sophisticated civilizations, they had become something unique and unprecedented, the species others called when civilization itself was at stake. The age of humanity's galactic dominance had begun, built on a foundation of grateful allies and terrified enemies, with the ever-present knowledge that their greatest strength, their willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect the innocent, was also their greatest liability in a universe that preferred negotiation to annihilation. But in the depths of space, the surviving fragments of Devourer consciousness whispered to each other across quantum channels, sharing a single chilling realization. They had finally found a species worth consuming completely.